Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly hyped today because we're undertaking a truly epic deep dive into a phenomenon that has captivated millions of us all around the world. Now, as your host, my goal today is to be an amazing guide. Honestly, a truly great guide as we unpack this. I put a lot of work into putting this explainer together, and I want us to really take our time analyzing these topics. We're not going to rush. We are going to be patient and deep dive into exactly why we connect so deeply with these incredible characters. Why do we get literal chills when they stand back up against impossible odds? Or why do we shed real tears when they finally achieve their dreams? You see, we aren't just looking at what legendary shonen characters do, we are examining the literal mythic forces that forge their very souls. As we explore these massive philosophical concepts together, we're going to look at the raw, undeniable forces that take an ordinary, often broken person and forge them into a breathtaking legend. So let's uncover the architecture of a heroic soul.
Okay, let's dive into this incredibly structured journey we have planned today. We're going to uncover 5 architectural layers: the mythic shonen forge, the shadow of fear, empathy as a furnace, identity reborn by loyalty, and finally, the final heroic choice.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the mythic shonen forge, the crucible. When we look at iconic, world-shaking characters like Naruto, Luffy, or Goku, we have to realize they don't just happen, right? They are placed into a literal, overwhelming crucible. Because a hero is never made by just one single thing. They're forged by a collision of massive, unstoppable forces. First, think about the journey itself. It's this long, physical and emotional road that systematically breaks down their naive worldview and then rebuilds them, exposing every single weakness just to force their evolution. Then you have the battles. A battle in these stories isn't just throwing punches or energy blasts. It is a profound clash of ideals. When Goku pushes his body past its absolute limits, he is sculpting his own willpower in real time. He's proving that hard work can surpass any natural-born genius. Then we have the immense weight of the past. Think of Naruto sitting alone on that swing, completely isolated from his village. The past is a shadow they absolutely have to master. It doesn't define them, but it aggressively challenges them to rise beyond their deepest trauma. And finally, the future. The future is the horizon they chase. It's the impossible dream, like becoming Hokage or finding the One Piece, that pulls them forward and keeps them from sinking when the world completely collapses around them.
And this brilliantly illustrates why these journeys feel so completely overwhelming for the viewer. Every single narrative arc demands a brand new, vastly stronger version of the hero. The scale we're dealing with here is just massive. We're talking about literal identity destruction before true evolution can even happen. The hero almost always has to realize that their current worldview or their current level of strength is entirely insufficient to protect the people they love. Their old self literally has to break. And the stakes? They're world-shaking, operating on a mythic scale that can span across entire years or even different dimensions and worlds. But beneath all those flashy attacks, there is always this heavy philosophical weight. They're fighting for concepts like true freedom, pure morality, or just the basic right to exist. And that relentless escalation means they can never, ever settle. The moment they conquer one summit, the universe throws an even steeper mountain right in front of them. This is the exact forge that elevates an outcast to a legend.
Moving right on along to Section 2, the shadow of fear, the first shadow. So we've talked extensively about the external forge, but now we really need to step inside the hero's mind. Because before there is blinding bravery, there is always the shadow of fear. Fear is the earliest sculptor. It teaches a young hero exactly what pain feels like, what loss feels like, and what sheer cruelty looks like. Now, let's be real. The normal, totally understandable human reaction to immense pain and trauma is to put up walls. It's to become hardened, cold, and distant just to survive it all. But the heroic self-forging process is entirely different. A true hero takes that exact same paralyzing fear, that exact same deep pain, and somehow transmutes it into hypervigilance, profound compassion, and unwavering purpose. They aren't shaped by fear because they surrendered to it. They're shaped by it because they fundamentally refused to become what fear wanted them to be. Fear just carves out the empty space.
But what fills in that empty outline? Goodness. And I really, really want to emphasize this point, because goodness in this context is absolutely not soft. It's not passive. It is not just about being polite. In these stories, goodness is an active, overwhelmingly powerful kind of strength. It is the definitive, conscious choice to physically stand between other people and their pain. Think about that classic trope where a hero finally has the villain, the one who ruined their entire life, completely at their mercy. The easiest thing in the world would be to take vengeance, right? To just let that cycle of violence continue. But true goodness is the hero dropping their weapon or turning around to shield a bystander instead. It's the hero making the rarest, most incredibly difficult decision of all, saying, I have suffered incredibly, but I will not pass my pain forward. That pure refusal, that active goodness, is so much rarer than magical talent or a predetermined destiny. It's what turns a fragile human into an unbreakable shield.
Let's shift gears to Section 3, Empathy as a Furnace, the engine of strength.
So we know the hero's core identity is goodness, but what is the actual engine that drives them to overcome these impossible physical limits? Let's trace the ignition sequence here. Empathy is absolutely not a weakness. It is a literal furnace that turns deep emotional feeling into unstoppable kinetic power. Step 1 begins when they feel another person's pain or terror as if it's their very own. Step 2 is the shift. That deep, empathetic compassion rapidly becomes a hardened resolve. Now, linger on the transition to Step 3, because this is where the magic really happens. That unwavering resolve mutates into actual terrifying physical power. The air gets heavy, the ground cracks, their aura explodes. And finally, Step 4. That overwhelming power is channeled directly into absolute protection. Empathy isn't just crying in sympathy, it is breaking the limits of the human body to ensure no one else ever has to shed a tear.
A perfect shining example of this exact moral willpower is Deku from My Hero Academia. You can be a hero. When All Might speaks those words, Deku's entire identity is completely rewritten. Remember, before this moment, Deku had absolutely zero power, nothing. He had no quirk, no special destiny, and absolutely no combat training. Yet, when his childhood bully was trapped by the sludge villain and all the pro-heroes just stood by watching, it was Deku's pure empathy that moved his legs. Out of nothing but a desperate, burning desire to save a life, this moment of ultimate validation ignites a raging fire inside him. His empathy literally demands that he shatter his own bones, destroying his body over and over just to keep others safe. Goodness and empathy ignited a heroic destiny straight out of thin air.
The really crucial point here is that empathy is what keeps this overwhelming, godlike power firmly anchored. It makes their strength deeply moral, not just physical. Empathy is the very reason a hero doesn't become a monster. Think about the villains in these very same stories. So often antagonists are just dark mirrors of the hero. They suffered the exact same trauma, the exact same crushing isolation, but somewhere along the line they lost their empathetic anchor. They decided the world needed to be punished for what happened to them. When you possess world-shaking power, it is only the ethical engine of empathy, the absolute refusal to let other people suffer alone, that ensures that power is used to protect the world rather than to just burn it to ash.
Now we are building to the climax of this explainer with Section 4, Identity Reborn by Loyalty, Identity Transformed. We're introducing the rarest and honestly most powerful catalyst of all here, absolute burning devotion. Let's map out the staggering evolution of Roronoa Zoro from One Piece. This timeline of rebirth is just incredible to look at. Phase 1 is his profound humbling by Drackle Mihawk. Zoro realizes how vast the world truly is, and his rebirth is sparked purely by immense respect for the gap between their skill levels. Then Phase 2 is breathtaking. Zoro completely burns his own immense pride, bowing his head and literally kneeling to his greatest rival, Mihawk, begging for training. It is a rebirth through absolute devotion. He completely throws away his own personal ambition to better serve his captain's dream. And then Phase 3, Thriller Bark, a rebirth through ultimate sacrifice. Zoro steps forward to take all of Luffy's impossible, lethal pain into his own body. Picture that iconic scene, Zoro standing alone in a massive pool of his own blood, his arms crossed, surviving agonizing, completely impossible pain. And when asked what happened, he simply replies, nothing happened. Zoro's entire ego and old identity burn away across these moments until he is completely reborn simply as the unbreakable blade that clears his captain's path. And you know, it isn't just Zoro. Let's look at the internal shift of Port Gusty Ace. Ace started his life completely crushed by the sins of his biological father, the Pirate King. His old identity was defined by this heartbreaking, pervasive thought, I shouldn't have been born. He was a furious, lost kid, weighed down by so much shame, constantly picking fights just looking for a place to die or be validated. But then he meets Whitebeard. His entire old identity just dissolves the moment he is fully accepted. He finds a true father, and his reborn identity becomes, I have a father worth dying for. Loyalty to his captain didn't just give Ace a physical power boost. It completely saved his soul and rewrote his entire reason to exist on this earth. Then we have Chopper, whose transformation is undeniably one of the most beautiful and emotional arcs in the entire genre.
I will be the doctor who keeps my captain alive. Chopper's backstory is pure, unfiltered tragedy. He was rejected and chased out by his own reindeer herd for having a blue nose, and then he was hunted as a literal monster by humans. He hid in the freezing snowy mountains, completely unwanted and deeply terrified of the world. But Luffy doesn't care about logic or appearances or what society thinks. Luffy just looks at this incredible creature and yells, "Shut up, let's go!" That blunt, simple, absolute acceptance completely shatters Chopper's isolation. It rebuilds him from the ground up, giving him a joyous, fiercely loyal purpose. These moments are the true sparks of rebirth, and we see them across so many beloved legends. Luffy wasn't permanently shattered by Ace's tragic death. After a period of intense, blinding grief, he was ignited by love when Jinbei reminded him of what he still had left, his crew. That profound brotherhood pushed his conqueror's haki to an entirely new level. Look at Killua from Hunter x Hunter. His loyalty to Gon was so overwhelmingly strong that when his deep-rooted assassin conditioning screamed at him to run away and abandon his friend, he physically dug his own fingers into his skull and ripped out the literal needle his brother had planted there. He actively chose friendship over his programming. And Naruto found his entire sense of self-worth the exact moment his teacher, Iruka, threw himself in front of a giant shuriken for him, shedding real tears for the demon fox child. True identity rebirth always comes from goodness, empathy, and brotherhood, never from hatred or revenge.
And that brings us to our final section. Section 5, the final heroic choice. The final answer.
We have finally reached the ultimate thesis of our deep dive. Parentage, destiny, and bloodline are just the raw materials. They are nothing but the spark. Think about it. We see countless antagonists and side characters who possess royal bloodlines, divine destinies, or overwhelming inherited magical power, yet they ultimately fall short. Why is that? It's because they rely entirely on the spark. They expect the universe to just hand them victory. But while a bloodline might set the stage and give you a flashy entrance, it never ever dictates the final shape of the soul or the true outcome of the journey. Because ultimately, amidst all the chaos of the forge and the heavy weight of destiny, the hero is the flame. I will not break. The present moment is the true crucible. When the muscles tear, when the odds are completely mathematically impossible, when everyone else on the battlefield says it's over. Out of all the forces in the mythic forge we discussed today, the trauma of the past, the expectations of destiny, the epic scale of the battles, the final, definitive answer is always the hero's own indomitable will. They are the one who actively chooses to step into the fire. They are the one who walks out fundamentally changed. The refusal to stay down when gravity and logic demand it, that conscious choice in the present moment, is what truly forges the legend. Which leaves us with one final provocative question for you today. Which fire matches your legend? We might not be fighting literal world-ending villains or throwing energy blast in our daily lives, but we are all actively living in our own daily forge. Every single day demands resilience. So what good forces, whether it's a fierce loyalty to your friends, a profound and driving empathy, or just the simple, active choice to practice goodness in a really hard world, what drives your own everyday heroism? Remember, you are the flame. Choose the fire that protects, let it fuel your journey, and absolutely refuse to break. Thank you so much for joining me as we explored the architecture of a heroic soul today, and keep that fire burning.